Hello friends, and welcome back to the Solo Gamers Club. I'm Keith, and tonight I'll begin a campaign playthrough of Napoleon against Europe from Hexasim Games, driven by GMT's CDG Solo system, which will be steering both sides of this grand conflict. No hidden information, no hindsight, no bias. Just the cards, the tables, and the unpredictable machinery of the Napoleonic Wars. Across this series, we'll watch an alternate history unfold, from the opening thunderclap of 1805 to the final cannonade at Waterloo in 1815. Every march, every diplomatic gamble, every desperate battle will be shaped by the CDG Solo system. My role is simply to choose the best card available for each faction and narrate the consequences as Europe reshapes itself around those decisions. Drawing on what we explored in the first two videos, we're setting off on a journey through military strategy, international intrigue, and the political currents swirling through the capitals of Europe. If you've ever wondered what it might feel like to stand in Napoleon's boots at the dawn of the Third Coalition, settle in and let the cards tell his story. Before we dive in, I've got some exciting news for fans of Napoleon against Europe. The word is that the designer is currently developing and playtesting a deluxe edition, a refined, expanded version promising clearer rules and even deeper strategic texture for those of us who live and breathe this era. And there's more. A new game using the same engine is reportedly in the works, covering the early wars of 1792 through 1800. This means Italy. This means Egypt. This means watching the rise of a young general who would become emperor. For students of the period, it's irresistible. From what I understand, we may hear more about both projects in late 2026 or early 2027, and I hope that that is true. This game remains my favorite treatment of the Napoleonic Wars. When paired with GMT's CDG Solo system, it gives the solitaire player a rare chance to command the sweeping campaigns of the era without needing a full weekend or a banquet hall-sized table. It's grand strategy distilled into something you can actually finish, capturing the military, political, and economic decisions of the period better than anything else on my gaming shelf. Before we begin the playthrough, I want to address a rule issue that has caused confusion for many players, specifically how 3 cards interact with the special rules governing the Iberian Peninsula. At the start of the 1805 scenario, Spain is allied with France. However, Spain cannot send resources to France until the Empire plays Continental Blockade and Snare of Bayonne. In addition, no foreign land forces may enter Spain or Portugal. That means Spanish forces cannot invade Portugal or Gibraltar, and coalition forces cannot invade Spain. Naval engagements, however, are unrestricted. Now, to open the door to land operations on the Iberian Peninsula, the Empire must play either Continental Blockade or Snare of Bayonne. Once one of these cards is played, France may move a limited number of land units into Spain and allow combat operations against Portugal and Gibraltar. Now, examining these cards more carefully, we find out that there is an underlined statement on each of the cards, and it says this card cannot be discarded. And that's where I think a lot of the problems come into play. The card cannot be discarded unless the event that is listed is played. So it's going to clog up the Empire's hand until we can play these cards. And I think part of the problem with the confusion is people are not taking the card literally. When it says the card cannot be discarded, that means that the card cannot be discarded during the end phase, but also the card cannot be played for its 3 activation APs, because playing the card for that would discard the card. So we cannot play that card unless we play it for the event. And we know this by examining the Iberian Peninsula player aid. And it says Snare of Bayonne, card number 24F. And at the bottom of that, the third paragraph, it says the 3 AP on the card can be spent along with the event to activate forces in Spain and Portugal, or forces that will enter Spain, providing they were adjacent to the Spanish border at the beginning of the move. So that's where I think a lot of the confusion is coming in with these cards. And this creates an interesting dynamic for the Empire. They may not wish to open the theater in Spain, but the necessity of clearing the card from their display might compel them to do so. Now, working hand in hand with the Snare of Bayonne card is a coalition card called Dos de Mayo. And if this is played, it's going to trigger the Spanish War of Independence. And all the restrictions on the Iberian Peninsula will be lifted at that point. And the playing of this card is very likely going to lead to Napoleon's Spanish ulcer. So when we play the Snare of Bayonne card, we do it with the understanding that if the Dos de Mayo card is available, that can be played by the coalition, and that will start the Spanish War of Independence. And to be clear, the Dos de Mayo card cannot be played until the Snare of Bayonne card is played first. But there is an exception to this. If we are in the punishments phase of the game, the card can be played then, irregardless of the Snare of Bayonne card. So I hope this clears up some of the confusion that has been associated with the special rules regarding the Iberian Peninsula and these basic 3 cards that are geared towards those special rules. Now for this playthrough, I've developed a new display. I'm calling it the Major Nations Diplomatic Chart. And this is going to list the status of each of the major nations as they exist. And when things change, we will adjust the tokens on the board. Currently, we have for the Empire, France, and Spain are allied. Our neutrals will include Prussia and the Ottomans. The coalition consists of Britain, Russia, and Austria. Our other displays are going to consist of the Major Powers Reserve sheet, where we're going to keep all of our reserve units that can come into the game. We also have a Minor Nations with Armies display. I'm using these cubes to track the status of those nations, either French Protectorate, French Ally, Neutral, or Coalition Ally. And then we have neutral nations without armies. So we can quickly, at a glance, during, say, the diplomacy phase, we'll be able to see which nations are eligible for us to target during those phases. All right, we've consulted our 1805 setup card, and we've set up the forces on the board for our first turn. All right, next we're going to give each of the decks, the Empire and Coalition decks, we're going to give those a cut, and then we're going to fill up our CDG displays with our starting cards. Okay, those decks have been cut, and we'll start with the Empire. In position A, we have the Persia card, Column of March, and the rest of these will be face down. And now for the Coalition. In space A, they have Bombardment of Copenhagen. intrigues, and 3 face-down cards. Each faction has a maximum hand size of 7 to start the game. Following the 1805 turn, we'll be using the card assignment table to determine our hand sizes for future years. So we're going to begin with the second round of the 1805 season. This will be a clear weather round. One of the things that I most love about this game is we're not forced down to any historical path. We can technically do anything we choose to. If we want to take the historical approach and have Napoleon and his marshals go after Austria and Russia, we can do so. If we want to take the option to attempt an invasion of Britain, if we can gain control of the English Channel, we'd be able to use the crossing arrow and move into Portsmouth and make an invasion of England. If we chose to use our cards for diplomatic actions, we can attempt to get neutral minor nations on our side. So there's a plethora of things that we can do. Most often, the historical approach is the best. Napoleon made very few errors. His 2 largest errors, obviously, were his approach to Spain and his invasion of Russia. But with the exception of those 2, Napoleon's actions were pretty much the premier actions that were available to him. But we're not restricted in any way on what we want to do. So we're going to begin by making a roll of the fate die for our CDG solo system. That's going to tell us what cards we're going to have available to us. All right, we're going to give that die a roll and see what cards we're going to have available for turn 1. The result is C, D, and E. So we're going to flip up cards C, D, and E, and then we can use them for any purpose. So we're going to be able to see all of our cards. And we'll see what we have here. All right, we've got turning movement, foul weather, and the combat card, Sound of the Guns. So, according to this die roll, we can select cards C, D, or E for any purpose, meaning we can use them for their action points or for the event. Now, this foul weather card presents us with a very unique opportunity on turn 1. The card says, activation of a squadron that escapes a blockade without interception. We can do that during our activation phase, or automatic evasion by a squadron if the card is played during the other player's activation. So this gives us a very unique opportunity. And we could use that event, in this case, for this squadron that we have in Brest. What we would be able to do is automatically escape interception by the British that are blockading us. Normally, when we would move into that blockade box, they have an auto interception. But that foul weather card would allow us to escape a blockade. We would move into the North Atlantic, and then we could move into the English Channel, and we would attempt to combat that British force that's patrolling the English Channel. Now, the problem with this strategy is that even if we were successful and we moved into the Channel, and even if we were to win the battle against that British force, we won't be able to execute our crossing until the next turn. And by that time, British Navy could try to hunt us down in the Channel and stop us. So it's a big risk because we would be allocating action points for an action that is probably very low probability of success. But without this foul weather card, we would have to undergo a naval battle against the British forces in the box. We'd have to win that and then move into the North Atlantic and then into the channel and very likely be intercepted by another Royal Navy squadron. Another option for us would be to use one of those 2-point activation cards and activate St. Cyr's force. He's currently located in Tuscany, in Florence. We'd be able to activate him, and with a slight forced march, we'd be able to move into the Papal States, lay siege to Rome, and then continue on and attack the Neapolitans at Naples. Neapolitans are a British ally. If we can do that by taking Naples, we will automatically take control of the thumb of Italy. Sicily will remain a separate entity, but we would be able to take out the Neapolitans, and the Neapolitan fleet would be eliminated. A third option would be, I guess you could call the standard option. That would be for us to activate Marmon's force in Holland. He would move through northern Germany, collecting the Third Corps in Hanover, move into Thuringia, taking control of that from the Austrians, and move into northern Bavaria, where we have a reduced Bavarian Corps, and place him in position to cover the northern flank of the Grande Armée when they make their charge against Mach. While I am tempted, since we have the foul weather card, to try our operation and the invasion of England, I just think there's just too many hoops to jump through with that, and I think we're going to take the safer route, and I think I'm probably going to activate Marmon's force in Holland and get his forces closer to our main theater in central Germany. So, since we're going to abandon our attempted invasion of Britain, we'll spend our card, moving us down to 6 available, and I believe we'll use the foul weather card. We probably won't be needing that, and that'll give us our 2-point activation for Marmon's force, and then we will simply refresh that space, keeping the facing of the draw deck. So we'll use the 2 points from that activation card, and we're going to pay the 2 points to activate Marmon in Holland. He currently commands a half-strength Dutch Corps and a half-strength French elite corps. His mission is going to be to collect that 3rd French Corps in Hanover, moving through Wesel, going into Thuringia, converting that to French control, and then finally ending with the Bavarian Corps in Bavaria. So we're going to need a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 movement points. And I think we're going to leave the Dutch Corps behind, so we will have 4 movement points for Marmon. So we're going to have to attempt a 2-point forced march. So I'll place a dice there to remind myself we're attempting 2-point forced march, and then we will gather his forces and make the movement. He'll spend a movement point entering Hanover, claiming the 3rd Corps. He'll spend a second into Wesel, which is in Berg. That's a Dutch ally. A Bavarian ally. He'll spend his 3rd point into southern part of Berg, his 4th to enter Thuringia. He'll spend a 5th point to convert that to French control. We'll place a French control marker there, and his 6th move will be to move into northern part of Bavaria. Marmon has conducted a 2-point forced march, so we're going to have to make a roll on the forced march table. The force strength that included into his forced march was a 2-step of the 3rd Corps and 1 step of the 6th Corps. So we'll be using the 2 to 3 column, and the following modifiers will apply. We're going to be gaining +2 for the 2-point forced march that we declared, and we're also going to get the modifier -2, force composed exclusively of French. So we're equal right now, and we'll be rolling on the 2 to 3 column. And here is the roll on the attrition table. He's rolled a 3, and a 3 on the 2 to 3 column is no loss. So he successfully arrives in northern Bavaria, and he will take command of that half-strength Bavarian corps there. So he's done his duty. We'll move on to the coalition portion of the second round of 1805, and we'll make a roll on with the fate die to see what cards are available to the coalition. The result is an E and less than symbol. And that result reads, if there is only one or no face-up cards on the display, flip any one face-down card face-up until there are 2 face-up cards. Well, we have the 2 face-up cards. Then it says, play any face-up event, or play the lowest value ops card for any allowable purpose, or play a permanent card for any purpose, and then fill the played card slot from the draw deck, maintaining facing. Okay. The scenario rules for the 1805 campaign state that before the coalition can take any other action, they must besiege the fortresses of Ulm and Mantua. So based on this die result for the CDG solo display, the only options that are available to the coalition would be to play the lowest valued ops card for its ops, which is a 1. That's not enough to activate any viable force for the coalition. The other option is they can play a permanent card, and I believe that is what they will do. The coalition is going to play the permanent card, Holy Empire, and they will play that for its 2-point activation value. With the 2-point activation, they're going to use that to activate Archduke Charles's force in Venice. He currently commands 7 strength points. He has 4 corps, of which 1 is reduced. So he's going to take that force and he will move into the swampy terrain around Mantua. So he'll expend 2 of his 3 points moving there. That will offer an opportunity for Massena's army of Italy to possibly intercept Charles if he chooses. Massena will decline his interception attempt, and Charles will use his 3rd point to besiege the citadel of Mantua. So we'll place a siege marker there, and he's going to launch a siege attack against that citadel. So we begin by checking the modifiers. The first one is the differential of tactical values of the generals. There's no general defending the citadel, so it would be just the attack value of Charles himself. And so far he has a +1 for his offensive ability. But this is a citadel, and that's going to be getting a -2 dice roll modifier. So Charles will go from a +1 to a -1 modifier, and then we will make the siege roll and consult the table. Here's the roll, -1. We have a 6 modified to a 5, and a 5 result is stable. So his siege will continue. We will advance the siege marker to a +1 for next time. And Charles has basically met 1/2 of the Austrian requirements by besieging Mantua. We'll move on to the French portion of the 3rd round. And this is a clear weather round. We'll roll the fate die and see what cards we have available to us. The result is an E and less than symbol. Well, we clearly have more than 2 face-up cards on the display, so this result will allow us to play any face-up event or play the lowest value ops card for any allowable purpose, or play the permanent card for any purpose. In addition, we can always take a free 1-point activation without playing a card. So those are our options. So those are our choices for the card selection. And another thing I'd like to point out about this CDG solo system that really makes this a lot of fun for a solo player is with the dice roll, it limits what you're able to do as opposed to what you'd have in a standard 2-player game. In a standard 2-player game, we would have 7 cards in our hand and we'd be able to make the selections from that. But with this die system, it limits, it changes the strategy a little bit. As an example now, I'm caught between doing a 1-point operation, playing a 1-point operation card, playing any of the cards for an event, or using my permanent card, Genius of Napoleon. Now in this case, I don't want to play the Genius of Napoleon card necessarily. I'd like to save that for later in this campaign against Austria and Russia. But if I want to do anything that is meaningful on this turn, it's already the 3rd round, we only have 1 more round of clear weather, I might have to play that given the limitations of that die roll. So it really makes it a lot of fun for the solitaire player in making very meaningful choices. Now, as for our card selection, I could play the Persia card. That would place a full corps and a Russian general in the Foreign Wars box. That won't really affect the campaign too much. This is going to be centered mostly in Austria, so that card really wouldn't be too beneficial to me for its event. The other ones, the events really won't apply at this time, so that leaves me between a 1-point operation that I can declare or using my Genius of Napoleon card for 3 activation points. And I think that's the route we're going to go. I don't necessarily want to play the card right now, but I'm going to, and we'll play the Genius of Napoleon card for 3-point activation. That'll move our cards remaining down to 5, and now we have 3 activation points. I'm not in too much of a hurry to send the Grande Armée necessarily moving at this time. Mack's Army of Germany still has to besiege Ulm before they can have any freedom of action, so we've got time for that. I think what we'll do is we're going to use 2 points of the 3-point activation to activate St. Cyr's force. He's going to take care of controlling the Papal States, and he's going to launch an attack on Naples, I think. That's what we're going to do. And then with the 3rd point, we're going to bank that. We'll put that into our stored APs area, and we can use that for later in the campaign. So I think that's what we'll do. All right, St. Cyr is currently commanding the 13th Corps along with a mobile supply depot. So what we'll do is we're going to activate him for movement, and I have to decide if I want to go after the Neapolitans at this time or just worry about the securing of the Papal States. He has 4 movement points, so we would spend 1, 2 to get into Rome, 3 to besiege it, and a 4th point would give us an extra siege assault against Rome. So I think to play it safe, I'm going to not declare any forced march, and St. Cyr will move into the Papal States, which is an Austrian ally. We'll cross the bridge at no cost, paying 1 point to move into Rome. And then we're going to pay our 3rd point to besiege Rome. So we'll place a siege marker down on Rome, and then St. Cyr will conduct a siege assault. And consulting our siege table, the tactical modifier for St. Cyr is 2 on the attack. So we're going to be getting a +2 die roll modifier for the siege attack. So we'll give St. Cyr a +2 dice roll modifier, and we'll make the roll. Okay, he's rolled a 2, And we have a +2 modifier, moves it up to 4, and that's stable. So we will advance the siege marker to +1, and St. Cyr has 1 movement point remaining. He'll spend his 4th point, and he will redo the siege assault. So he's going to get +2 for his offense and +1 for the duration of the siege. So he's up to a +3 modifier, and we'll see if he can complete this. Here's the roll. He's rolled a 4. +3 is 7. 7 is honors. So he's done it. So Rome surrenders. We'll place a destroyed fort marker and a French control marker. And I think St. Cyr will spend his mobile supply depot. He'll spend that to reconstruct the fortifications of Rome, and now he can use that as a supply conduit. We have 1 point remaining from our activation of the Genius of Napoleon card, and I think we're going to bank that. So we're going to add 1 into our PA stock for the French, and then they can supplement that if necessary later in the campaign. So we're going to switch now to the coalition's 3rd round, and we'll see what they're going to do. All right, the coalition has 6 cards remaining. We'll make their fate roll. And they've rolled A and B. So we will, A and B are already exposed, so the coalition can play either A or B for any purpose. Unfortunately for the coalition, they need 3 points to activate Mach's Army of Germany. Neither of the cards will give them what they need. So, taking into account the considerations that we have, the coalition is going to play the 2-point card, Bombardment of Copenhagen, for its 2 activation points. We'll refill the slot with a card from the draw pile, keeping the orientation. Well, the only force that's going to be capable of us activating this turn that will be able to besiege Ulm is going to be John. He's currently in the Tyrol, in Innsbruck. So we're going to activate his force, and he has 3 movement points. He's commanding the 4th Corps, 4th Austrian Corps. He has 3 movement points. So I think the way to approach this is John will activate, move into Munich, which is Bavarian territory. He'll spend a movement point to convert that to Austrian control. He'll spend a 3rd to move into Ulm, and a 4th point to besiege Ulm. And we will do that. So it's going to require him to do a 1-point forced march. And we'll mark him with 1 point. Forced march, and then he will continue with what he's planning. So he'll move into Munich, spending a point to convert that to Austrian control, spending a 3rd point to move into Ulm, and his 4th point will be used to besiege Ulm. We're not required to take care of the forced march until after we conduct the siege attack. So in this case, John has a tactical modifier of 1. It's going to give him a +1 for the siege attack. And we'll mark that with a siege marker. And here is John's siege attack on Ulm. He's rolled a 6, +1 is 7, and that is honors, and Ulm surrenders to the Austrians. So the Austrians will take control of the area around Ulm. We'll place a destroyed fortification marker there, and John has met his requirements now. The Austrians have besieged both Mantua and Ulm. And now during the next round, they'll be able to take any actions they choose. All we have left now is to resolve John's forced march. So we'll be using the 2 to 3 column. John is commanding a strength of 1 core of 2 points, and the modifiers will be +1 per movement point required. He undertook a 1-point forced march, so we'll be adding 1 to the result. Nothing else will apply. Here is the roll. He's rolled a 5 that's modified to a 6, and that is an asterisk. And we'll have to make another roll, and on a result of 4 to 6, he's going to lose a step to attrition. And that is what's happened. So John's forced march cost him a half a step. He is commanding now 1 strength point of the 4th corps, but he has done his duty. And he has managed to perform what the Austrians needed him to perform. All right, both factions have 5 cards remaining. We'll make the roll for the Empire. This is the 4th round, and this is the final round of clear weather. And we've rolled A, B, and C, so we will make sure that we reveal all cards in A, B, and C, and then we can select one of those for any purpose. And this is the Fouché card. And I think the Empire is going to play the Persia card. We'll play that for its 3-point activation. And we will refresh that slot, moving the Fouché card over there. So we have 3 activation points. We're going to begin by spending 2 points to activate Marmont's force in northern Bavaria. Marmont is going to execute a 2-point forced march. He's going to sever the lines of communication from John's force back to Mach. So we are going to declare a 2-point forced march. Marmont's force is now composed of the half-strength 6th Corps, the full-strength 3rd Corps, and a Bavarian half-strength corps. Our movement value is 3. We're going to declare a 2-point forced march, giving us 5 movement points. And he is going to move into this province, heading south into Munich. Now at that point, Mach's army could attempt an interception, but Coalition does not have a 3-point card they can play to pay the cost. So we know Mach is not going to be able to intercede. So we've spent 1, 2. We're going to spend a 3rd point to convert that back to French control, severing one of the supply lines to John's force in Ulm. We're going to spend a 4th point to enter Innsbruck. At that point, John would be able to, could have intercepted also at Munich. But once again, it costs 2 points to activate his force for an interception. Same for Charles. They don't have a 2-point card to play. Now, I should point out that even though the coalition doesn't have a card with the proper amount of action points face up, they could play their permanent cards for use in these interception attempts. They're not going to do that because the probability of Mach being able to intercept will be very low, and Charles would be intercepting through a mountain pass. But those opportunities technically would be available to the coalition, but that would require the play of one of the permanent cards, either the Admiralty card or the Holy Russia card. We spent our 4th point to move into Innsbruck, and we're going to launch a siege attack against Innsbruck. And if we can successfully capture that, that will bust John's supply lines. So we're going to place a siege marker down, and Marmont is going to make a siege attack against Innsbruck. And he has a +1 modifier for his offensive tactical ability, and we'll give him a +1 die for the siege attack. And here's his siege attack. He's rolled a 6, +1 is 7, and that's honors, and Innsbruck surrenders. So the siege of Innsbruck is over. We're going to place a destroyed fortification marker there and French control. And we've successfully severed John's line of communications now. He's cut off. And I think Marmont is going to reconstruct the fortifications, and we're going to spend this Bavarian Corps to reconstruct the forts and our supply situation. And now we're going to have to make our attrition roll. Total force that Marmont moved was 2, 3, and 4 for the Bavarian Corps. So we'll be using the 4 to 5 column. And we have done a 2-point forced march, so we'll be adding 2 to the roll. And we had a force that was at least 50% French forces, so that'll give us a -1. So our total modifier for the attrition roll will be +2, -1, and we're going to be at a +1. So here is the roll on the 4 to 5 table. He's rolled a 6, +1 is 7, and that's going to be a 1 with an asterisk. So we've lost 1 step. We'll see if we roll to lose another. 4 to 6. And he did not, so he's going to lose 1 step. We've taken care of our attrition roll, and he'll lose 1 step of the elite 3rd Corps. So he currently has 2 corps composing 2 strength points. That will end the activation for Marmont, and we have 1 activation point remaining from our card. We're going to spend that 1 point to activate Napoleon and the Grande Armée. Grande Armée has currently 4 movement points. Napoleon is going to declare a 2-point forced march for the Grande Armée. Before the Grande Armée leaves the shores of Boulogne, he is going to dispatch Marshal Lannes and the 9th Corps, and they will serve as a blocking force in case Moore's force ends up to get a little aggressive. We'll have a block to that crossing arrow. Britain currently is in control of the English Channel, and therefore that crossing arrow is active for them. Napoleon has 6 movement points with the forced march. He'll move into Soissons for 1, into Metz for 2, into Strasbourg for 4, paying the cost of the crossing arrow in the mountains. He'll spend a 5th point to move into Bade with the Württemberg half-strength corps. We're going to leave that in place, and he's going to move, using his 6th point, to move into Ulm, where John's force lies. Now, unfortunately for John, he was unable to repair the fortifications in Ulm, so he won't be able to use an automatic evasion to go inside the fortifications. He will make a standard evasion roll, and he needs a 5 or better to successfully evade Napoleon's Grande Armée. None of the modifiers will apply, and we will make the roll and see if he's successful. He's rolled a 5, so he is successful, and he is able to evade the Grande Armée. All right, John's only path of evasion is in Munich. Now, Munich is controlled by the French. He is able to go there because it is unoccupied, but it won't change the status of the province. So John and his force will retreat into Munich. Napoleon has spent all of his 6 movement points, and he has a 2-point forced march we'll have to deal with. He will he cannot spend a point to convert that space, so it's still under Austrian control for the moment, and the fortress has been destroyed. Napoleon is going to spend one of his mobile supply depots, and he's going to reconstruct the fortification at Ulm, making that a French supply source. Now, it's still under Austrian control for the moment, but he can handle that in the future, no problems. We have to make the forced march, though, resolution for Napoleon. Napoleon's force consisted of 13 factors, so we're going to be using the 12 to 14 column, and the modifiers will be +2 for the forced march, and he'll get a -2 for exclusively French units. So we are at 0 modifiers. And here is the roll. He's rolled a 4, and a 4 on the 12 to 14 column is 1 asterisk. So Napoleon will be losing 1 step. We'll see if he loses a second. He does not. So Napoleon will lose 1 step, and he's going to select that from his 8th Corps. His 8th Corps will move from full strength to half strength. That'll move the size of the Grande Armée down to 12. And that is going to end France's round 4 of the activation. All right, the coalition forces are up next. They've already played 5 cards of their 7. We'll make the roll and see what cards are available to them. And they've rolled A, B. So we're going to reveal A and B, and they will have to select one of those to play for either the event or the activation value. Now they have the Das de Mayo card. They would like to keep that card, but in the circumstances we have, there's really no choice for them. They're going to play the Das de Mayo card for its 3-point activation, moving their cards available down to 4, and we will refresh that spot with a card from the draw deck. At the time of evasion, John's force was unsupplied, so we will have to mark him accordingly. It should have been done at the time he did his evasion. Now the coalition is not under any obligations anymore. They have successfully taken care of their besieging of Ulm and Mantua. They can use that card for any purpose now. I think they're going to use 2 points of the 3-point activation to activate the Russian First Army under Kutuzov. All right, Kutuzov is going to declare a 3-point forced march. So we'll put that out there. Now before Kutuzov actually activates his force, the French are going to play the card Column of March. Activated coalition forces only move 1 area this round. Very powerful card. So even though Kutuzov has declared a 3-point forced march, he's only going to be able to travel 1 province. That card will be discarded, and that's actually out of play. That has a gold star next to it. And when that card is played for its event, it is removed from play. So technically, Kutuzov has 6 movement points, but the Column of March card will restrict him to just 1 province. He's going to spend a movement point to incorporate Buxhausen's force into his army before he leaves Lublin, which is the 5th Corps and the Guards, the Russian Guards. Those will be added into the Russian First Army. So Kutuzov has spent 1 movement point out of his 6. He'll spend a second to move into Eastern Galicia, and then that Column of March card is going to kick in, and that is going to stop Kutuzov's force from moving any further. When that card is played, we disregard any forced march declaration, so Kutuzov does not have to make a forced march roll. With the play of that Column of March card, the French have played 4 cards. They have 3 cards remaining on their display. Coalition has played 3 cards. They have 4 cards remaining. Coalition has 1 activation point remaining, and I think they're going to bank that. They'll place that 1 point in their PA stock, and that's going to bring the 4th round to a close. We'll move on to the 5th round, the French portion of that, and this is going to be a bad weather turn. So we're at the 5th round, and this is the French turn, and Napoleon has 2 rounds to be able to take Austria out of the war. And that's his primary objective at this point. Let's make the fate roll, see what cards are available to him. He's rolled C, D, and E. So we'll make sure C, D, and E are face up, and then we can select any one of these 3 cards. That is the Marie Waleska card, very important card for France to establish the Duchy of Poland. I think at this point, Napoleon is going to declare a 1-point AP operation. That's for free. We'll spend that point to activate La Grande Armée. So with the play of the Empire's 1 AP activation, the Empire still has 3 cards remaining for the round. We're activating the Grande Armée, and we'll have to see what Napoleon is going to declare for a forced march. He's going to need 1 point to convert Ulm back to French control. Another movement point to enter into Munich, hopefully overrunning John's force. A 3rd point into Salzburg, hopefully destroying Mack's army, and a 4th point possibly to besiege the fortress of Salzburg, a 5th point to enter Vienna, and a 6th point to besiege the capital. So he'll declare a 3-point forced march. And we'll mark Napoleon's Grande Armée accordingly. He has 6 movement points. Seven. 3 for the forced march, 4 for the standard movement. He's going to spend a movement point to convert Ulm back to French control, and he can run his supplies through there. His 2nd point will be to enter Munich. And the unsupplied, well, at least at the moment, unsupplied John's force. Now with that movement into Munich, Mack's army of Germany in Salzburg has the opportunity to attempt an interception. And this is something that we're going to have to think about. He'll have to spend the Admiralty card. It's the only card they have available that has enough APs to pay the interception attempt for Mack. The interception attempt would give Mack a +1 to combat if he's successful. That's a very low probability. I think at this point, what we'll do is John is going to attempt to evade. His supplies are now reestablished. He is being currently supplied through Salzburg, so we can remove the unsupplied marker there. And he will attempt an evasion. He needs a result of 5 or 6 to be successful. Otherwise, he will be overrun. Here is the roll. He's rolled a 6. He is successful, and he's able to evade. He is going to evade into Salzburg. Now, following that successful evasion by John, we have to consolidate the forces there. Now, John has a hierarchy level of 3. He's higher rated than Mack at 4. He will not be a subordinate general to a lower ranking general, even if it commands an army. So what will happen is John will be removed to the force pool, and his remnants of his 4th Corps will join Mack's army of Germany. Napoleon will continue with his advance. He has 7 movement points. He has spent 1 to convert Ulm to French control, and a second point moving into Munich. He's going to spend a third point, and he is going to move into Salzburg and attempt to bring Mach and his army to battle. Mach's only tactical resource is going to be evasion at this point. So he will attempt an evasion roll. He needs a 5 or 6. He has no modifiers. Here's the roll. He's rolled a 4. He is unsuccessful, and Mach's army of Germany and Napoleon's Grande Armée will fight a field battle outside of Salzburg. The battle is taking place in Salzburg. Mach's army of Germany is drawing supply from Vienna, so he is in supply. The Grande Armée will be drawing supply from between Munich to Ulm, and then 2-point movement points back to Strasbourg, so both sides are in supply. Prior to the commencement of the battle, Napoleon will have to resolve his forced march. His army consists of 12 factors. We'll be using the 12 to 14 column. He's initiated a 3-point forced march, so that's +3, but the force is composed completely of French units, -2. So the modifier for this attrition roll will be +1 for Napoleon, and we'll make the roll. The result is a 3. That's modified to a 4. In a 4, the result is 1 with an asterisk. Napoleon will lose 1 factor, and we'll see if he loses a second on a roll of 4 to 6. And he does. So he has to lose 2 factors. He's going to eliminate the 8th Corps, and he will remove 1 step from the elite 7th Corps to pay for the attrition. All right. Now we'll commence the battle. Our first step in the battle resolution we've already taken care of. We've determined both sides are in supply. Second step is counter marches. The only force that is eligible for a counter march attempt would be Marmont's force in the Tyrol. That would entail him, though, to move through a mountain pass. I think Marmont will remain in his position in the Tyrol. We'll move on to the next step, and that's going to be to compute the odds. We have 10 French factors attacking 8 Austrian factors. That computes out to 1.25 to 1. And in this case, because we are under 0.5, it'll be rounded down. That will be 1 to 1, and there's no tactical modifier for that. Next step is to calculate the level of battle. We have a combined total of 18 factors, meaning it will be a minor battle. We'll be using the 8 to 21 column. Next, we'll determine the morale levels of each side. The Austrians have a morale level of 3, and we will mark them accordingly. The French have 2, 4, 5, 7 steps of level 5 morale. So that is the majority, and we will give them level 5 morale. Next, we determine cavalry superiority. Napoleon has his reserve cavalry with 2 steps and a cavalry general, Murat. That's a total of 3. Mach has 1 step of reserve cavalry, so that means that Napoleon is going to be gaining +1 die roll modifier for cavalry superiority. Next, we'll check terrain effects. In this case, there are none. It's standard terrain. Once again, our supply checks have been done. Both sides are in supply. We'll move on to declaring an elite or special unit. The Austrians have no elite units, but Napoleon does, and he's going to send forth his 4th Corps as his spearhead unit. That has 1 gold star. It's going to give him +1 to his die roll modifier, moving him up to 2. Next, we consider the commanding generals. Napoleon has a 3 strength on attack. That will move him up to a total of 5. Mach has 0, so he will remain at 0 for the moment. Next is subordinate generals. And I think Napoleon is going to declare that Marshal Davout is going to be his primary subordinate. That will give a +2 for his attack value to Napoleon's army. That moves Napoleon's dice roll modifiers up to 7. The only subordinate that Mack has is Ferdinand, and he's 0 on defense, so poor Mack still has no dice roll modifier. And finally, we will determine if any combat cards will be played, starting with the attacker. Napoleon will not play any combat cards at this time. He does have the Sound of the Guns combat card available, which would automatically make a countermarch successful, but we're not going to do that. The coalition has no combat cards available, so we will go through with the battle resolution. Each side is going to roll 2 dice and add in their combat modifiers. Here's Napoleon's attack roll. He's rolled an 8. An 8 and 7 is a total of 15. Now we'll make the roll for Mack's army of Germany. And he's rolled a 7. We'll check the combat results table and apply the effects. Napoleon's result of 15 is a 4C result, meaning the Austrians will lose 4 steps, of which one must be reserve cavalry if available. So Mack is going to lose 1 step of reserve cavalry, and he will take the remaining losses from the 1st, 10th, and 6th Corps. The Austrians inflict 1+ result on the French. 1 casualty, and it must be from the lead unit. In this case, the 4th Corps will be inverted. And Napoleon has won the battle 4-1. We'll have to check for the wounding of any subordinates that were used in the battle. In this case, we will check for Davout. On a 6, he will be wounded and moved to the reserves. The result's a 4, so Davout is not wounded. Next, we're going to have to check for demoralization of Mack's army. His current morale is 3. We're going to modify that based upon his tactical defense value, which in this case is 0, so he's still at 3. And then we further modify that by the difference in casualties. Napoleon inflicted 4, Mack inflicted 1, that's a difference of 3. That will bring Mack's morale down to 0, and it is impossible for his army to pass a morale test with 0. So therefore, the army of Germany is demoralized. And we'll place a demoralization marker on his force. And now, Napoleon orders a cavalry pursuit, pursuing the demoralized army of Germany. We'll calculate our modifiers for the cavalry pursuit. We begin with the tactical value of the attacking general. In this case, we have the brilliant Napoleon with +3 for his offensive tactical value. We also gain a point for each step of reserve cavalry. We have 2 points for that. That moves us up to a total of 5. And finally, we have a cavalry general in the auspices of Murat. That will move him up to 6. We're going to roll a die, and we will add the die roll to the modifiers, subtract 6 from that total, and that will be additional casualties placed upon the Austrians. Here is the roll. He's rolled a 2, so we have a total of 8. 8 is 2 greater than 6, so we're going to be inflicting 2 additional step losses on the Austrians. The Austrians will take those casualties with the elimination of the 1st and 10th Corps. And that's going to bring an end to the battle at Salzburg, and Mack's demoralized army of Germany, consisting now of 2 strength points and 1 supply depot, is going to have to withdraw. I'm going to make one change to the outcome of the battle. In lieu of losing the remaining portion of the 1st Corps, Mach is going to sacrifice his mobile supply wagons. You're able to do that. You can, in lieu of a strength point, lose depots to pursuit, and that's what he'll do. So the supply depot will be lost, and his 1/2 strength value first corps will remain. So Mach's army has 3 steps, Ferdinand and himself, and he is demoralized. So the army of Germany is forced into retreat, and Mach is going to retreat into the capital of Vienna. Napoleon, having won the battle, now gets a free siege attempt against Salzburg. So we will mark that with a siege marker and a French control marker. And Napoleon will resolve a siege attack on Salzburg. Napoleon is going to gain +3 for his tactical modifier and an additional point because he is in command of an army. They have a dedicated corps of engineers. That will give him a +4 to his siege attack. We'll make the roll and see if Napoleon can successfully take Salzburg. He's rolled a 3. The total is 7, and that's honors. Napoleon has taken Salzburg, and we'll mark that with a destroyed fortification marker. Napoleon is going to spend his last remaining mobile supply depot, and he's going to convert Salzburg to his control. Thus, he can run his supplies through Salzburg, through Ulm, back to the French homeland in Strasbourg. Napoleon has spent 3 of his total 7 movement points that are available. He's going to spend his 4th point to move into Vienna, the capital. Mach's army of Germany is demoralized, and he can evade automatically if he chooses, and he will. He is going to evade from Vienna into Leopoldstadt. And Napoleon now gets a siege attempt in Vienna. He's going to spend his 5th movement point and attempt the siege of Vienna. Normally, he would get a free siege attempt if he wins a battle in the space, but in this case, Mach has evaded, so he will spend a movement point and do a siege attack on the capital. Once again, Napoleon will have a +4 modifier for his siege roll. Here's his roll. He rolls a 3, that is 7, and result is honors, and Vienna surrenders to Napoleon. So we're going to place a destroyed fortification marker on Vienna and a French control marker there as well. Now Napoleon can repair the fortification. He currently has no mobile supply depots, but he can sacrifice a step of a corps to reconstitute that location. At this point, Napoleon, if all things remain equal, has knocked Austria out of the war. He controls the capital. He controls one of their 2 key points. And the Austrian army is currently demoralized. So at this point, if 1805 ends with the current conditions, Napoleon will have knocked Austria out of the war. If somehow Mach is able to rally his army, Napoleon will need to also control Prague, which is an additional key zone in Austria. Napoleon has currently spent 5 of his 7 movement points. Considerations are Napoleon's army must remain supplied in order to institute the conquest of Austria. Charles's force is still active at Mantua, and if somehow he would be able to sever Napoleon's supply line, that could prove to be a problem for Napoleon. And I should have probably left a blocking force in Salzburg. We haven't done that. We have 2 movement points remaining. So I think what we'll do is Napoleon will move the Grande Armée back into Salzburg, and he's going to dispatch a force there. He's going to dispatch the elite Second Corps in Salzburg, and he'll spend his final movement point to return back to Vienna. Now, if Charles attempts to either confront Napoleon at Vienna or attempts to sever his lines of communication at Salzburg, we'll have several opportunities. Napoleon will be able to intercept him, or Marmont may be able to intercept him through the mountain pass into Salzburg. I actually discovered one error. This is a poor weather turn. Napoleon would have, with his 3-point forced march that he had, would only have a total of 6 movement points, not 7. So in this case, what we're going to do is, instead of doing the backtrack like I did, after Napoleon won the battle in Salzburg, he drops off the Second Corps and then finally moves to Vienna. So we will repair that mistake in that manner. All right, it is the coalition's 5th round, and we'll make the die roll. They rolled A, B, and C. So we'll flip up A, B, and C. And they have to select one of those 3 cards for event or for the action points. Now, one of the cards that they have available is the Winter Campaign card. A 7th winter round is played. An additional modifier of +1 to the attrition die roll on the 7th round. A coalition force is activated. Well, that could be something that coalition might want to play. In order to prevent collapse, they have to rally Mach's force, or they have to drive Napoleon from Vienna. Those are the choices at this point. Well, the coalition's position is very precarious. As it stands now, Austria will be defeated at the end of this round. So their choices are to rally Mach's force or to drive Napoleon from Vienna. Kutuzov could be activated. Now this is a bad weather turn, so he has 2 internal movement points. He would need a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to reach Vienna. So that would cost a 3-point forced march, and he'll be crossing poor terrain, giving it a negative modifier. Other option would be to activate Charles's force at Mantua and have him attempt to sever Napoleon's supply line, which is currently going through Salzburg, Munich, Ulm, and back to Strasbourg. But unfortunately, that action, his only crossing point in poor weather, he's going to have to try to use a mountain pass. He could go into the Tyrol, attempting to dislodge Marmont's force. It would be crossing a mountain pass. Other choice would be to move into Carinthia and then through a mountain pass back to Salzburg and try to defeat the Second Corps, but Napoleon will have an interception attempt. Well, to have any chance at this at all, we have to get the Russians involved. So I think we're going to play the Rothschild's card for its 3-point activation. And we're going to activate Kutuzov's Russian First Army. He currently has 2 movement points. We lose 1 because of the poor weather. So we're going to need to get him into a position where he can at least get to Vienna if necessary. So our choices would be to move him 1, 2, 3 into Moravia, and then he'd be within 2 movement points of the capital. That sounds reasonable. Any more forced marching is going to just chew up his army. So I think we'll do that, and we'll move Kutuzov. He's going to undertake a 1-point forced march, giving him a total of 3 movement points. 1, 2, and 3, and he moves into Brune. All right. And there we are going to have to resolve the forced march attempt. Modifiers for the attrition are going to be +1 for the forced march, plus 2 for the poor zone crossed. That's +3. And -1 for exclusively Russian units. So Kutuzov's forced march right now is at 2. And we'll have him roll to see what happens. His total force is 8 strength points. Here's the roll. He's rolled a 4 that's modified to a 6. With 8 strength points, he's going to suffer 1 loss. And he will lose 1 step from the 5th corps that's a standard corps, leaving him with 7. Now we have spent a total of 2 out of the 3 activation points from the Rothschilds card. Our choices would be to bank that other point, moving us up to a total of 2 that we can use in the final turns, or we could spend the point from our stockpile with the remaining point from Rothschilds and activate Charles's force. Those are kind of the 2 options that we have. Well, Charles has right now a total of 2 movement points, and if he force marched his complete amount, that would give him 5. To get to Salzburg, it would cost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he can't reach Salzburg during this turn. If he chooses to attack into the Tyrol, the Senna will not be able to intercept because that is just a mountain range between them, and that would not allow him the interception attempt. He has to have a mountain pass there. The problem being is his supplies would be going through the location he's coming from. So Mantua is not under his control at this point. He has sufficient movement points to reach the capital if he chooses. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 into Vienna. So he could fight a field battle against Napoleon if he chooses to. Now, if we choose to bank that remaining activation point, that would give us 2 points in the stockpile. We have the Winter Campaign card, but if we play that for the event, we'll only be able to activate 1 force with that card. Say that could be Kutuzov's Russian army. We would have 2 points available in the stock. We could spend those to activate Charles, but he's still too far away from the action. We don't have enough to activate Mach's army to attempt to rally it. I think we're going to spend the 1 point from the Rothschilds card that is left, and we'll spend our stockpile point to activate Charles for movement. He has 2 movement points, and we'll have him conduct just a mild forced march of 1 point. That'll be sufficient for him to get to the other side of that mountain range. So we'll have him do a 1 point activation of forced march, giving him 3 movement points. He'll spend 1 to move into Venice, and his remaining 2 to cross the mountain pass into this province south of Carinthia. The siege is now broken on Mantua, and he'll have to undertake a 1 point forced march. Modifiers will be +1, and he's going to be able to gain -2 because the movement is entirely across national territory. So he's technically at a -1 for the roll. And his force consists of a total of 7 factors. So we'll be rolling on the 6 to 8 column. All right. Here's the roll. He's rolled a 6. -1 is 5. A 5 on the 6 to 8 column is 1 loss. So to pay for the attrition loss, he is going to reduce his 9th Corps. It's It's always best to keep as many cores active as possible. We technically could eliminate this 8th core, but it's better to have as many cores as possible in your stack. You don't want to eliminate cores unless you have to. All right, so he's completed his move. The Rothschild's card has been played, and now we move on to the 6th round, French activation in the 6th round, and that is a winter round. All right, the Empire will make their fate roll. See what cards are available to us. We've got C, D, and E. So we can play any of those 3 cards for the event or for its activation points. I think the French are going to use a 1-point activation, and we're going to activate Massena's Army of Italy for movement. He has currently a total of 2 movement points if we take the Italian corps with us. I think we're going to leave the Italian corps behind, and that will guard Milan. That gives him a total of 3 movement points. And I think we're going to march him to Salzburg. 2 points through the mountain pass into Zurich, 3 into Ulm, 4 into Munich, and 5 into Salzburg. So we're going to need 2 points of forced march to do this. And in winter, that is not good, but we're going to try that. So he will be doing a 2-point forced march, giving him a total of 5 movement points. We spend 2 through the mountain pass into Zurich, a 3rd point into Ulm, a 4th point into Munich, and a 5th point into Salzburg, where he will absorb the 2nd Corps. We'll take care of his 2-point forced march. Massena is commanding a total of 3 steps. His modifiers will be +2 for the forced march and -2 for exclusively French steps. So right now we are at 0 modifier. Here's the roll on the 2 to 3 column. He's rolled a 6, and that is an asterisk. So on a 4 to 6, he will lose a step. Now he does possess 1 mobile supply depot, and we could spend that to gain a -2 modifier. I don't know if we have to declare that before or after. I think you can do it either way. So if we end up using that mobile supply depot, his final result will be a 4, and that'll be no loss. And I think he will do that. Massena will use the supply depot to help him in his forced march, and there will be no loss. Napoleon still has 3 cards remaining, and so do the coalition. After reviewing the footage, I noticed I forgot to apply the +2 modifier for a winter turn for the forced march of Massena. So we're going to correct that. Massena will need to lose a step, and he will take that out of his 11th Corps, and he's going to reduce that by 1. And that will correct the problem for my oversight. We'll move on now to the 6th round for the coalition. In order to stave off Austrian collapse, they're either going to have to retake Vienna from Napoleon, or the Austrians will have to rally the army of Germany. Now the problem is, when an enemy force occupies your capital, the morale of your troops is -1. So in this case, Mach is going to have a morale level of 2 for the army of Germany. It means he's going to have to roll a 2 or a 1 in order to rally his force. That's a 1 in 3 chance. The other possibility would be to have Kutuzov attack Napoleon at Vienna and drive him away. That is the choices that the coalition has. Now, the coalition has an interesting dilemma. They have this winter campaign card. If they play that for the event, they're going to be able to execute a 7th round. It'll be a winter round. And there'll be an additional modifier of +1 to the attrition die of the 7th round. And they will be able to activate a coalition force by playing that event. The problem with that is it's going to give Napoleon another round, and he's definitely in the driver's seat right now. Not only the Grande Armée, but now the Army of Italy is nearby. So that might not be their best approach. We'll have to see what happens. All right, here's the fate die roll. We'll see what cards are available. They've rolled a C, less than, and exclamation point. So let's take a look at that on the chart. And that reads, if not already face up, flip the card in slot C. So we will do so. The card is revealed to be a wound. All right. Next, it says play card C or the lowest valued face-up ops card in A, B, D, or E for any allowable purpose, or play a permanent card for any allowable purpose. If there are multiple low-valued ops cards, choose which to play, and then fill the card slot from the draw deck, maintaining facing. Okay. So right now, the options would be to play card C, the wound card, or the lowest valued face-up op card. That would be the intrigues card. So, the other option is to use permanent card. I think the playing of the winter campaign card is going to give an advantage to the French. They've got all their forces collated there. I think the best way that we have in order to try to stave off the defeat of Austria is to use the Admiralty card. And that is worth 3 activation points. We can play that and activate Mach's Army of Germany, and that would allow him 1 chance at rallying his force. He can't force march because he is demoralized, so he'd have to use 2 of his movement points, which is all that he will have, and attempt to rally that army. If he can rally it, that will prevent the collapse of Austria, because the French do not control Prague. The odds of Kutuzov dislodging Napoleon from Vienna are, I think, slim. Now, whether that's a 1 in 3 chance or maybe a little better, I'm not sure. Right now, we'd be looking at a 1 in 3 chance for Mach to rally his force, but I think that's the approach we're going to take. So we're going to activate Mach's Army of Germany. Because the capital is under French control, it's going to reduce the morale level of the Army of Germany, so that will put it down to 2, and we're going to have to roll a 2 or a 1 for the rally to be successful. So this is a very low probability on this, but I think overall that's probably the best. This will keep Kutuzov's army in pretty much intact regardless of the outcome. So this is the rally attempt for Mach. And he's rolled a 6, so he's failed to rally the Army of Germany. He's used up both of his available movement points. This being a winter turn, he's down to 2. So he'll only have the 1 rally attempt, and he's failed. So Austria has fallen to the French. Well, that was a tough decision. There would have been other ones. We could have activated Charles's force and moved him to attack Napoleon at Vienna. Napoleon would have had an intercept attempt, though, in Carinthia. Same thing would have happened with Kutuzov's force. He could have entered the location with Mach's Army of Germany and then attacked the capital. Once again, Napoleon could have reacted into that space by interception. So In either way, it appears that the Austrians were just out of position. What really helped was France's play of that card that delayed the movement of Kutuzov in northern Austria. That column card is very powerful. All right, so we're going to move on to the end of activation phase. After all activation rounds are complete, the following steps are performed in order. Both players reset their saved AP to 0. So the French stockpile is reduced from 1 back to 0. Next, we do the supply check for both sides, checking the status of all units. Well, it appears everyone is going to be in supply. Napoleon's Grande Armée goes through Munich to Ulm, back to Strasbourg. Same for Marmont. He is going to go through Ulm, back to the capital. Charles is being supplied currently from Venice. Mach's army from Leopoldstadt, and the Russians back through to Brest-Litovsk. So everyone's in supply. Next, it says that besieged, unsupplied, and demoralized forces must make an attrition test. So that is going to be Mach's army of Germany. Mach's army consists of a total of 3 strength points. We'll be using the 2 to 3 column, and there are no modifiers that are going to apply. So only on a roll of a 6 will that cause a potential problem for Mach. Here's the roll. And he's rolled a 3, so no losses for him. Next, players gain control of each enemy-controlled zone where they have a supplied non-besieged force. Well, that's already been completed. Tyrol, Vienna, Salzburg, those are all under French control, as they should be. And finally, it says in supply controlled fortresses are reactivated. So the fortress at Vienna is now reactivated for free. We'll move on to the conquests phase, and it says in this phase, check if any minor powers surrender, and then check if any major powers surrender. Well, we're going to have several of those. We'll begin with the Papal States. St. Cyr is in possession of Rome, and that is going to force the Papal States to surrender to France. Similar condition will occur in Thuringe. That was an Austrian ally, and now it's under French control. Rules state that a minor power with no units which surrenders can be annexed or become allied to the conquering power. Conquering power's choice. France is going to elect to make Thuringia an ally. And in the case of the Papal States, we're going to make that French national territory. And because that is directly attached to French national territory, that boundary line now moves to the southern line of the Papal States, meaning the Papal States now are considered to be part of France and will be able to recruit into those locations. Now, by annexing the Papal States the way we did, that will be one of the 3 provinces that we're able to claim as a part of our victory against the Austrians. We're going to secure Venice and the Tyrol. And as a part of this treaty, we're going to cede control of Tyrol to Bavaria. And we're going to create the nation of Bavaria. And so, by creating the Kingdom of Bavaria, we're going to place a block on our card assignment table, and that is going to give us an extra card during the 1806 campaign. It says Tyrol annexed by Bavaria. No card if Munich or Innsbruck are controlled by the coalition. So we're in good shape with that. Next, we're going to cede Venice and create the Kingdom of Italy. In doing so, another Italian corps becomes available for France, and we're going to place that into the French force pool. Conquering Power now has the decision to take either a card for next turn or 4 resource points. We're going to take the cards and we'll mark major powers defeated during last turn. Next, the Conquering Power must choose to either leave their units in place or return them to the nearest fortress in terms of movement points within friendly territory. Any forces previously allied with the Conquered Power and within the Conquered Power's territory are also returned to the nearest fortress. So in the case of Marmont's force, we're going to leave him in the Tyrol. That is part of Bavaria now, so he's fine. The army of Italy under Massena is going to have to relocate, and the nearest place for him is 2 movement points into Ulm, so we will move him there. Now we have the Grande Armée, which is currently in Vienna, and we'll see where the nearest location for us is. 1, 2, 3 points to that fortress. 1, 2, 3 into the Tyrol, or 1, 2, that's as far as we can. So it's going to be between those 2. And I guess we'll elect to have Napoleon move into the Tyrol, and he will absorb Marmont's force. The Russians will have to go back to Brest-Litovsk. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That'll be the nearest. So the Russian army goes back into their territory. Now the conquered powers can move all of their forces to key zones within their national territory in any arrangement that they choose. So I think we will move Bellegarde's force into Prague. The army of Germany will move into Vienna, and that is going to also, we will move Charles's force into that army as well. And then we'll work out the specifications of who will be commanding that force in the future. And finally, we're going to go through our reset phase. We're going to remove enemy control markers from zones that are occupied by friendly non-besieged units. We'll remove control markers from conquered powers, remove all control markers of conquering powers within a conquered territory. Demoralization markers will be removed. So the army of Germany is no longer demoralized. Then we would check if there were any major powers that have been in a forced peace for over a year, and we'd make a roll to see if they move from forced peace to neutral. We have none of those at this point. So that will complete the reset phase. We will go on to the victory phase. And in the victory phase, if the Empire has 20 victory points, they will win. If the coalition has brought the victory total down to 0, they would win. Next, we're going to make some adjustments to the victory and escalade levels. We've conquered Austria for the first time. It's going to make a bonus to the escalade level. We'll move that up to 1. In addition, France is going to gain a victory point, up to 6. We've also created the Kingdom of Italy, and in doing so, the Empire is going to gain a victory point, the escalade will increase by 1, and we have added that extra Italian corps to the French force pool. So escalade goes to 2, French victory points to 7. And so we're going to bring 1805 to a close, and in the next video we will be getting into some of the more interesting phases in the game. We'll be resolving the inner phase, which is going to include our declarations of war phase, card hand phase, budget phase, diplomatic phase, and strategic redeployment. And we will take care of that in the next video. I hope you've enjoyed this 3rd episode of my series. If you want to know what it was like to be Napoleon, play this game. And so this is Keith from the Solo Gamers Club signing off and inviting you to tune in to the channel for our next video. In the meantime, I'd like to wish everyone a pleasant evening and a good night.